Right. Good evening, folks. Welcome to our nice little conversation about how NFTs work in the Omnichain scenario. We have quite a few guests over here. We've got Sankalp Pandey, we've got Anirudh, we've got Akanksha, Uday, Charan, Arvind, and myself. I'm Junaid. I'll just tell everyone a little bit about what we do as a company, and then we can begin from there. How does that sound?
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool?
Yeah.
Okay, just quickly sharing my screen, and I'll pick it up from there. So as you can see, Dojima Network has been, in the industry for a couple of years now. We've been silently building something really nice and strong, and made sure that it's worth everyone's while. The USP over here that we have is that we are an omni-chain platform that connects EVM to EVM, EVM to non-EVM, and non-EVM to non-EVM as well to transfer assets and messages across the board. As you can see, our logo is quite interesting with multiple things coming out of it, which are the other chains that are connected on our layer. Moving on from here, generally speaking, when developers come on board, they do have multiple options to work with, and each one has their own USP and limitations, like two sides of coin. So to solve this particular problem, what we've done over here is we've created a layer one, the Dojima chain, which is the deployment layer where people can go ahead and upload anything of their applications, cross-chain applications. They can build on top of that. The Hermes layer over here on the top here, that is where the execution happens across all 7 chains that are connected right now, and they're growing. We do have quite an interesting amount of partners that have onboarded onto our chain to make sure that they can take advantage of the cross-chain infrastructure that we have, the Omnichain platform as we call it. The product partners are quite strong. The protocols onboarded are ever growing. We do have some interesting hackathons and events as well that we do around the world, and our ecosystem is consistently growing. Going forward, this is the basis of the architecture of the Dojima chain. Now let's take into consideration the NFTs that we're talking about, the non-fungible tokens. Many people have a question on what is an NFT. Why do people get an NFT? Is it something that you invest into, or is it a vanity product, or how do you trade in it? Where does it go from there? What is the advantage of holding one? So many simple yet interesting questions. However, we have some interesting questions which are not that simple. Anyway, so what we've done over here is we have the cross-chain EVM layer. We are EVM based. And what we've done is anyone can, mint their NFT on the chain, put it up on the Hermes layer, and then pick and choose which ecosystem they want to utilize for the marketplace, provided the marketplace has been onboarded. And we use the Cosmos SDK and Tendermint for the Hermes layer, which helps execute everything in interoperability across Cosmos, Polkadot, Binance, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and Arweave. So that's just a little bit about what we do and who we are. As mentioned, we do have some interesting questions out there. So one of the questions that I have for the floor over here is, what are the fundamental advantages of an omni-chain NFT over traditional single-chain NFTs? Anyone from here could, pick that up and answer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Sankalp. Right. So I've got a few thoughts around it. Definitely, when it comes to Omni narratives, there are multiple chains and multiple, transfers that are happening across the chains that also, sort of gives some advantages in terms of the scalability perspective. Let's say, if any chain or if any NFT is, posted on any chain and that chain got hold for some XYZ reasons, I mean, the particular project should not get impacted in terms of the user adoption and the user transactions, right? So keeping the same presence on the multiple chains definitely gives a NFT, more visibility across the people. And across the security, it definitely comes behind it. So, again, the same narrative. I mean, let's say any chain is sort of not too much secured by any means, right? Keeping the assets on the different platforms, can make them pretty much secure so that the majority of the assets are still remain with themselves. So I guess these are, fundamental main advantages keeping the NFTs on a multiple platform instead of keeping on the one.
Makes sense, Sankalp. That's a very interesting answer, to keep it open to different platforms so you can have the interoperability of picking and choosing which provider you can go with now or in the near future. That's perfect. Anyway, I have another question over here, which is, I think I'll only answer this one because it's right up my alley. How does the Dojima Network's Omnichain architecture enhance the creation, sale, and trading of NFTs compared to other layer 1 platforms? So an NFT is basically a non-fungible token. Anyone can, mint an NFT on any platform that they want to. If it is a layer one platform, obviously anyone can do it. You can mint it on Ethereum, you can mint it on, Solana, Polkadot, whichever one that you prefer. And many times users prefer to utilize the same platform that, they want to trade on, and they mint it on the same platform. Now let's take an example for case over here. If I were to mint an NFT, I would want to mint it for the right reasons. Either it's a vanity product where I've done something to show off to the world what I hold, or it is something just creative, being a content creator and being able to share it with the world. If whoever wants to buy into it, they could and make a little bit of revenue. Now, where would I mint it to get the maximum exposure on the marketplace? Generally speaking, the simple answer is Ethereum. It has the maximum liquidity, the largest user base, the most effective system. Gas fees are a bit questionable on that one, though. So that's where we come into play. Minting it on the Dojima chain will allow you to mint it at much lesser gas fees than directly on the straight, layer one platform that are out there. And with that minted NFT, you could pick and choose which platform you would like to, sell it on, or which marketplace you would like to list it on, or where you would want to show it off. And not only that, another advantage is if it is just a vanity product, it's something which is very personal that you've done it for yourself. You could utilize the Hermes layer on Dojima to be able to transfer that NFT from one place to another. Like suppose you're using it in the metaverse, or you've minted a pair of shoes, which are fantastic, and you want to show them off on one of your gaming platforms. You could transfer that. The interoperability element is very, very, very much there. It's not very subtle. It's pretty pronounced. That is what we are here for, and that's what we help out. So that is one major difference that I would say, that the interoperability helps the user, the person that's minting the NFT, to be able to use it, trade it, or sell it, or whichever method they require or deem necessary for themselves, which is the most advantageous for themselves independently. I hope I've asked the question and answered it as well. So I hope people are in agreement over here. If you have any counters, I'm more than open to understand those. Should we move ahead? We can. Cool. A lot of nodding heads. So we have a question over here for Arvind, who is very well equipped to answer this. So Arvind, can you explain how interoperability across multiple blockchains, facilitated by the Dojima network, impacts the user experience in managing the NFTs and the ordinals, specifically speaking?
Yeah, hi Junaid and fellow panelists. So thanks for having me here. So to answer your question, Junaid, so for making this interoperability possible, we have a couple of products in our stack. So we commonly name them as Hermes and Narada. So to just give a glimpse on what both of them does is so basically Narada is a client layer. We consider it as a client layer. So what it does is it will be responsible for reading blocks of several blockchains and filtering out the Dojima transactions. So we have deployed a separate client for each blockchain, and this client will be continuously getting the blocks and filtering the needed transactions. So once these transactions are filtered, and these are aggregated and sent on to the Hermes chain. So Hermes itself is a blockchain. So it's basically built using Cosmos SDK, powered by Tendermint consensus. Other than this normal blockchain responsibilities, so other than managing its native asset and staking part and slashing part of the validators, so what Hermes is responsible for is, so basically on Hermes, the aggregated transactions will be pre-validated, and some of the security checks are made on these cross-chain transactions. So which are really important, before handing over the data onto the target chain. So it's our responsibility to just validate the data from the source chain. Other than these things, Hermes is also responsible for managing the liquidity of several other L1 chains. So for now, as Junaid said, we are supporting 7 L1 chains. So native currency of all these chains are handled by this Hermes chain in form of with help of pools. So this is pretty much about like Narada and Hermes and the set of responsibilities of these Narada and Hermes. And coming to today's topic, Omnichain NFTs. So it's like so when this NFTs trend have started, so it was all on Ethereum, and after that slowly recently it got shifted onto the Solana. So it's like obviously that trend will be keep on changing. So it's different for the developers or products to keep on adding the support for different platforms. So instead, what they can do is, if someone wants to build a cross-chain NFT platform or marketplace, so what they can do is like they can just integrate with our cross-chain product stack. So for this, all they need to do is like if they want to support few chains for this NFT platform. So all they want to do is like they just need to integrate with our Dojima contracts on top of these chains, and they just need to pass the NFT metadata and some data related to the target chain. And what we will be able to do is like our underlying infrastructure, which is responsible for handling the data, and we are responsible for securely delivering this data onto the target chain. And using this data, they can process this data for further stages, such as minting an NFT or transferring an NFT on the target chain.
Brilliant.
We have also coded some pre-templates which are in place, and developers can now use them seamlessly to integrate this cross-chain NFTs. So this is how NFTs work on this layer 1 chains. But what are these ordinals? So everyone must have heard this term known as ordinals or inscriptions in recent days. These two terms are used interchangeably, like both are almost same. So these are kind of like NFTs on Bitcoins. So Bitcoin devs term these as like immutable NFTs. So where do these lie is like if someone inscribes some data onto Bitcoin, so this data goes and lies in a script of the Bitcoin UTXO transaction. It's like a part of transaction only. So if once the data is inscribed onto the BTC, and it's like impossible to just change the data, because he or she needs like enormous amount of hash rate or hash power required to recompute the ledger. And
okay. One more question to add on to this, Arvind. I know it's not part of the discussion, but would that be slightly similar to signing an NFT as well?
So in ordinals, it's like the data is not tied with the user address. So basically, the data is just stored inside a transaction. And if someone wants to unlock his or her output on BTC, he need to provide his or her signature so that the network validates it. So that's how these ordinals are mapped on top of BTC. So on a glimpse, this is how ordinal landscape looks on BTC. And after discussing about this Omnichain NFTs and ordinals, so other than supporting this Omnichain NFTs, we are also supporting ordinals now. Cross-chain developers can just integrate with the Bitcoin chain from Dojima chain itself. So users can just inscribe an NFT from top of the Dojima chain. If they just have our native token Dodge, so now they are equipped to inscribe an NFT using this Dodge token.
That's interesting. That's very interesting, because BTC happens to be one of the most dynamic new chains that are coming around, and people are utilizing it quite effectively. So Arvind, thank you. That has been very insightful. I'll move on to the next question, which I think Anirudh, you can get this one. What are the potential impacts of Omnichain NFTs on intellectual property rights and digital ownership in the next, in the near future, let's say 5 years, for example?
Got it. Great question, actually, Junaid. So I have a couple of thoughts on this, but I think before that, before I actually outline a proper example or a use case, I think it's good to sort of establish that in a certain amount of context. As we've already been discussing, right? The first thing that an Omnichain NFT is going to enable for all of our users is a very seamless transfer of value, without being limited by chains, right? So value can be in terms of anything. Now you might be transferring an NFT. Now imagine there's an Ethereum, Bored Ape Yacht Club NFT, which is probably moving from Ethereum to Polygon. You suddenly have like a massive crowd going bonkers as to what's happening, right?
Yeah,
a real transfer of value when you have Omnichain NFTs present in the market. The second one is also when you have this sort of flexibility, it also brings in a freedom for you as an NFT project creator or a project that deals with NFTs, or you have interaction with NFTs on any level. It gives you freedom to explore different networks, right? You might be, for example, I'm a power user of the Ethereum network because I've been in Ethereum Maxi for the longest time, right? But now it gives me the freedom to explore other networks, the communities which those networks are building. And for the most part, I think the majority of the Web3 crowd is limited to the EVM-based ecosystems. You've got the Cosmos ecosystem, Solana-based ecosystems that are growing as well, right? So you have the freedom to explore. Now, and I think the last part that I also want to touch upon is the ownership, right? It becomes ownership in its truest sense because now, once again, you're no longer limited by,
by the chain.
Itself. We are all, I think every single person who's building in Web3 is limited by the trinity of the blockchain, right? Speed, scalability, and security.
Yeah, true.
It's always a trade-off. When you have a very high value NFT project coming out, they have to deploy on Ethereum because that's where you get the liquidity. That's where you have the value. That's where you have now the same guy. If he deploys in Polygon, nobody's really gonna really look into his NFT project because it just doesn't have that kind of brand value associated with it. So this context, I just want to set this before I answer this question, right? Is one of the biggest use cases that I see is in the creator economy itself. Right now, we see folks across in India and also across the world. You've got people who are internet personalities who are arguably just as famous and as influential as the biggest TV stars, biggest stars, right? And everyone is basically talking about one thing and one thing only. How is it that this influence can also be converted into, can also be monetized? And a lot of folks, in fact, even during my tenure at EtherSpot, we've been seeing consistently projects being built around creator economy use cases. And one of the largest issues that they're facing is, which chain do I pick to sort of rope in my creators for? Which chain do I pick to bring in my users for? Everyone is like, oh, should I go with Polygon because it's got very low gas fees? But Solana is really cool. They offer a lot of support as well. But then, hey, I get limited by that. I no longer can interact with the EVM ecosystem, right? So all of these things, from builders to end users, there's multiple projects out there which are doing this, right? So there's one which is, especially when you, as a creator, when you're building out and you're building out assets. When you're building out, let's say you created a short film, you created art, you created books, right? Whatever it might be. All of these, even though you have an NFT linked to this and you are technically an owner of this, you're limited. You're only an owner on Ethereum. How does that make sense? Right?
True.
Right. So this is just like a very simple example. Now take this a step further. Another thing that we are also seeing is, if you have these sort of use cases, look at all of these in this cycle, especially, we've got numerous enterprise companies that are trying to make Web3 plays. You've got big banks, you've got supply chain companies, you've got huge companies which are very seriously, consulting companies and more, who are very seriously looking into how can they incorporate blockchain within their tech stack, within their product offerings, the service offerings, right? Now, imagine, and a lot of them have to do with dealing with assets in the form of NFTs itself. This could be something as simple as a supply chain NFT, which basically just tells you how a product has moved across a particular cycle, right? But imagine that now, if you're looking at like a couple $100 million in NFTs and assets which are moving all around in the ecosystem, imagine if they're limited by just one chain or one network, right? Omnichain NFTs once again solve a fantastic problem. So it's all about like really sort of boosting your ownership rights and also the way in which your intellectual property can be transferred and more. I think it opens up like a whole set of doors, especially in this particular thing.
Fantastic. I like the way you put it across, which says ownership in the true sense. It actually does bring it down into break it down into very simple words, which are very powerful. Thank you, Anirudh, for those insights. Very, very nice one. So we do have another interesting query over here, which was posed, and I think Uday is the right person to answer this. Uday, one question goes out to you, which is, considering the unique capabilities of the Dojima network, what innovative use cases for NFTs have emerged that were not possible before Omnichain technology? I think Anirudh has covered majority of that over here, but still, please do give it a shot.
Let's say, for example, an NFT is deployed on a particular platform, but majority of the cases where the developers or users face problem is it is limited to that particular chain. So it's like confinement to that particular blockchain, and it limits the usage of those NFTs, which he might not use in the future. It is not reusable. So in this case, it comes like Omnichain NFTs functionality. So Omnichain functionality is like making use of different blockchains so that the NFTs can be used in different chains. Let's say, for example, Ethereum or Solana or Binance or Polygon, wherever. So it will provide the users to have more options, and it is not confined to that particular blockchain. Let's take some use cases which most of the users faces in a real scenario. So let's take gaming NFTs. So the user bought an asset in that particular game, which is supported on Ethereum. So now after the usage, he can't use that in different games. So in this case, in different game comes into play that is deployed on different chain, and it makes use of the existing assets which the game supports. So now user can make use of the asset which he bought on Ethereum, and he can transfer that to the game which is on Solana. Instead of buying 2 times, he can make use of the existing asset in different use cases. So that is one thing. And if you consider another case, it is like identities with NFTs. So let's take an example where user is having documents or any KYC verification done, and he was given an identity on particular chain. Now, if another chain comes into play and they also wants to see that particular user is verified or not, then we can make use of that particular identity deployed on other chain and make use of it in the chain which he wants right now. So this is also one case where Omnichain functionality comes into play. And in future, let's take around 5 years, real world assets are one of the major topics which users are thinking. So if some group of people has bought any land or any portrait or something, so they'll be having some ownership of that particular assets through NFTs. Let's take, for example. So let's take they have bought on Solana, which is having less gas fee, and they have kept for particular time. And next, they want to make use of that particular NFT, and they want to gain income more, and they will be shifting that to other chain. Let's take Ethereum, which is having vast amount of network. There we are having so many buyers and sellers. So it will be a positive for the users, whoever bought that particular asset. We also developed a particular product called Developer Dashboard, which is helpful for developers to deploy these Omnichain NFTs on multiple chains through one product, so that it will be useful for them to take more users onto their NFT marketplace or whatever the product whichever they deployed. So in this case, they can easily transfer the NFTs or tokens or the data, whichever they were having, and they can make use of for that dashboard to their use cases, which will be a positive for their assets.
Nice one, Uday. So just a culmination between what Uday and Anirudh mentioned, I'm looking at a fantastic use case over here where, galleries or artists for that matter could make NFTs of their existing artwork, which is in the real world, and they are sold in conjunction to the owner. Without one, the other is useless. So if tomorrow I were to buy, an MF Hussain without the NFT of that particular sketch of his, it would render it useless. So if I want to sell it, I have to sell the actual painting and the NFT together. So that would prove ownership across the board being an Omnichain setup. That's just one use case that I see in the near future, putting real world assets and tokenizing them. However, just about, I think a couple of years back, there was one artist that had a lot of paintings of his. And what he did was he minted them into NFTs and sold them online. And when anybody bought them, he would send them a video of him actually burning the real painting in fire, saying that, okay, now it is unique and you have that NFT for you. I found that really, well, lack of a better word, I found it counterproductive. It should have been sold in conjunction to make sure that the ownership of the painting is the same person who owns that NFT. That would have made more sense rather than putting hard work to waste. But well, that was a statement he wanted to make. He did that. So anyway, moving on from this one, thank you, Uday, once again. Sankalp, what are the challenges and limitations that you think that are currently facing the adoption of Omnichain NFTs, and how can they be addressed? Because there are so many people out there, as Uday and Anirudh mentioned as well. People choose unique chains right now because they're not aware about the entire Omnichain setup and how useful it might be. So, what do you think would be the limitations that they are facing for adoption of this new technology, in your opinion?
So, while I said the advantage in the on the very first shot, I think it's time to give some disadvantage on the very similar pointers, right? The chains need regulations, right? For example, if an NFT and the smart contracts has been designed in such a way for a specific chain, right? Now to transfer the same contract or the same use case to some other chain as well, right? It may differ in terms of the standardization, right? So interoperability might be a challenge in the longer run. For now, I think it's not that too much of the problem, to be honest. But certain regulatories has to be set up, in order to make the industry standardized in terms of getting the things done across the different platforms on a in a very righteous manner. Is something that I feel, right? Second, of course, is the scalability again. So again, for now, all the chains are trying to get some traction on themselves. So they are still in the development and the adoption phase. But let's say if I talk about after 3 years down the line, when the congestion in the traffic is pretty much high, right? So keeping the NFTs on the different platforms and the congestion on the on then and there itself at the same time might again affect the market accessibility. In terms of getting the users and adopting on the same NFTs. But I could not think of more of a disadvantages, because I think this narrative is being driven by Dojima part. So probably we'll see at how the things are going on. But I think disadvantages will unfold as in when the cases are.
Absolutely, it's on a case-to-case basis, isn't it, Sankalp? And having heard what you have to say, I have two sub questions onto this. Now, the only challenge over here would be people that already own an NFT and want to move it to a different chain. That is when they would be going through either a bridge or deploying it onto an Omnichain setup like ours, in which they will have the interoperability component to be able to interact with other chains. So that is a challenge for the existing NFT owners. But the new guys who are minting the new ones, if they come on board onto any Omnichain platform like ours, or ours itself for that matter, life would be simpler for them, don't you think?
No, absolutely. As I said, things are pushing off right now, right? So definitely the new users will have a new mindset to work upon the new tech for sure. But again, the things will have a dark side for sure. So, and those dark side will unwind,
as and when they come. Yeah.
as and when they come. I mean, because see, different use cases are gonna come in and on the platform at the very same time. So it's hard to predict right now. I think that what's gonna happen in the near future, because
and forgive the pun, but we will cross that bridge
for sure
when we come to it. Right?
Yeah.
Cool. That's a very good answer there, Sankalp. I have one last question before we wind this up, and it is a question that is asked in every panel everywhere around the world. It's more about governance and regulatory frameworks, and what are governments doing, and which countries are more friendly towards it, and so on and so forth. So this is open to the floor because everybody has a different opinion on this. We could take multiple answers on this one as well. So how do you see the evolution of governance and regulatory frameworks adapting to the rise of the omnichain NFTs and the complexities they introduce as opposed to these single chain ones?
I'm coming from a security company. Security, are definitely coming to the picture at the forefront. Audits are required. People are still not awake that audits, how they are important to get it done for the community, so that, it's the first basic check of the governance to do, so that, it can build some trust for the community. So me coming from a security background, definitely with a security standpoint, Anirudh, what's up for you, Arvind, with that?
I think we've had, I've been speaking with, even recently in Dubai, I had an opportunity to work, to sort of speak with multiple RWA tokenization companies, which are doing something similar. And one of the biggest challenges is usually regulation, sort of regulatory compliances, all of these things. And I think omnichain NFTs, in my opinion, are not going to majorly change things from a regulatory perspective. I think it has more to do with figuring out how is it that these can be effectively tokenized and made available across different ecosystems. And I think the challenges would come in case there's specific issues with that particular ecosystem. Like, for example, right? Because in the Southeast, for example, in Southeast Asia, I think, Sankalp, when we were there, you would, one of the things that we noticed was there's a massive market opportunity there, especially in terms of gaming, right? Gaming has a lot of, especially Web3 gaming, has so many NFT assets which are involved in that itself. Now, imagine there's some sort of a lockdown or a crackdown which happens there, right? Now, that would affect, if you have an omnichain setup, you have one part of it in one specific geography which gets affected, right? So now, how is it that these sorts of challenges could be tackled? So I think I have the perspective that I'm trying to bring is essentially from the fact that maybe from an evaluation standpoint, things might not change majorly, except for, of course, the point that Sankal brought in about security, which is, I think, front and center when it comes to building out a regulatory framework for anything tech-related, so to speak. But I think it's more with respect to how is it that omnichain is adopted across the world and specific geographical restrictions that might exist with respect to very specific contexts, right? I think that is going to be a little difficult to navigate and sort of face. And I think anybody who's building an omnichain project, that's something they have to keep in mind.
Awesome. So from the crux of it, what it looks like, the challenges are definitely there in real world tokenization and because of regulatory frameworks. However, I really like how you put it, the ownership in the true sense. When that comes into play, that is something which I don't think will have any kind of issue in the regulatory point of sense for any kind of governance or governments, because it's an asset that you hold. It is not something that you are, working alongside. It's something that you hold for, one of many reasons. So that is, that's quite interesting. So we do have, to sum it up over here in this entire conversation, it's quite interesting how people have different views on it. Somebody from a security point of view, somebody from a technical point of view, someone from, from a layman point of view, like myself, for example, in that case. But the crux of the matter is that NFTs have been there for a while. They created a lot of buzz with the Bored Ape and the Pudgy Penguins and everything out there. And I don't think they're going to fade out anytime soon. They're going to still be around. Only thing is how they're minted and how they're utilized or transferred is something which will be facilitated in a much more easier manner, because people will have more control and more flexibility at the same time on how they're interacting with those particular NFTs and other chains as well. And transfer of ownership should be much easier, considering somebody's on a different ecosystem altogether. Like Anirudh over here is a EVM fanboy, so to speak. Yeah. If I hop into the bandwagon and say that okay, I'm going to be using Solana all the time, in that case, if he wants to buy an NFT from me, it becomes difficult unless there is some kind of a setup which makes it much more easier.
Correct.
So the Omnichain NFTs are something which is today. I'm not saying it is the future. It is the now. So that's fantastic. So once again, thank you guys very much for coming on board and participating in this little discussion that we've had over here and supporting our cause.